Do you ever look at your kids and wonder, am I doing enough to make sure they actually love Jesus when they're grown? Not just obey rules while they live under my roof, but actually love Jesus when they're out on their own. If you're afraid your kids are going to walk away from the faith the day they turn 18, here's the deal. Forcing it always backfires. Modeling it terribly backfires even worse. So stay with me for a few minutes because we're going to discuss the real reasons why kids reject faith, what God actually asks of us parents, and one weekly habit that can make faith attractive instead of annoying your children. And by the end, you'll know a few mistakes that we as Christian parents make that end up pushing our kids away, how to raise kids who choose faith because they want to, not because they have to. And then one weekly habit that keeps faith alive in my own home. And this is from a dad whose teenagers have asked really hard questions and who's had to learn how to live faith in front of them and honestly. See, Deuteronomy 6 says that we're supposed to impress these commands on our children. Proverbs 22 says, train up a child in the way he should go and he'll not depart from our ways. So we're the spiritual leader of our home and eternity is at stake. And maybe you're someone who really struggles to be consistent. Maybe you don't pray very often. Maybe you don't disciple. You don't even know how to disciple your children. And it's hard. I mean, discipleship is no joke, especially as they get older and they become their own people and they have their own thoughts and all those things. It is something that requires extreme intentionality. Maybe you're not sure how to actually navigate this, so you end up forcing religion rather than encouraging relationship. Maybe we struggle with our own doubts, or maybe if I'm too strict, they'll rebel, or if I'm too soft, they'll drift. Or man, maybe I'm the dad who's supposed to always have answers, but I actually struggle with some of the answers myself. So we either over control or under engage, and both can make faith feel like a burden instead of a gift. And I've been there. My oldest one's asked, "Dad, do you ever doubt God?" I almost lied to look strong. But then I thought about it. Instead, I told the truth and opened up an incredible conversation with him. Owning my own imperfection made faith real to him. So here are 6 mistakes that I've found kind of push kids away from faith. One is, and I think maybe the most prevalent, is making faith about rules instead of relationship, or behaviors instead of heart conditions. Jesus was always addressing the heart before the behaviors. We also tend to use God as a threat sometimes. You know, we read verses and we say, oh, you got to be careful about this. God's going to punish you if you don't do this. And the reality is, what I've learned is that the more I understand how God parents me, the more it has helped me to parent my kids. How I'm discipled by the Lord is how I need to be discipling my kids. I think hypocrisy is another thing that can be really tough, is we live one way at church or when we're in front of people and then completely differently at home. That's another terrible one that our kids will end up looking and seeing right through that and going, no, I don't want anything to do with that. Well, this ended up creating a lifestyle where we never admit doubt or we never admit wrong or struggle in front of them. And so they just end up adopting that same kind of, at best, religious engagement. I think the other thing is turning every moment into a sermon. So I'm a pastor, I preach regularly, I counsel a lot, and I can fall into this pretty easily. And so I end up turning into pastor dad mode and can oftentimes expect perfection instead of progress. So I've been trying lately to look at the progress, encourage the progress, realizing that they're not going to achieve ultimate maturity for a long time. In fact, maybe never. We're told to grow out of our childish ways, to leave our childish ways, and to step into manhood, to mature, but that's a lifelong process. And God isn't silent on this. In fact, Deuteronomy 6 says, love God with all your heart. Talk about him when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lay down and when you get up, all the things. And the truth is, God never asks you to be perfect. In fact, he knows we're not going to be a perfect example. He asks us to be honest. And I think this is where we can really start seeing fruit, that when we begin to share our struggles in our own walks with the Lord, in our own discipling relationships, which means we own our wrongs. We also set the example by having people in our lives, other men in my life who are challenging me, who are helping me grow, so that I can also model that for my kids. So here's the one habit I think that can change everything: faith stories. So every week, have a conversation with each of your kids, whether it's all together or just with them individually, and have them share a few things, like one way you saw God work this week, or what's one question you have about God this week. And then also one way they failed this week, one way I failed this week and I needed grace. And it just begins to open up those conversations. I think so often we look at discipleship as a program rather than a relationship. And if you look at the way Jesus discipled his disciples, it was all in conversation. So I think another thing that bears a lot of fruit is just talking about one way that we're grateful, something we're grateful for about Jesus. What we do in our prayer time is we just use the ACTS model. So we use A for adoration, C for confession, T for thanksgiving, and S for supplication. And so we walk through that process as kind of as a base model with our kids. And we're not lecturing them, we're just getting into real stories, taking 10 minutes and just talking with them, making faith normal and relational. And I think when we begin to do this, it actually begins to attract our kids, because our kids are actually relationally driven. So listen, you're not raising perfect Christian kids. You're raising kids who've seen real relationship with Jesus up close. And that's what we get the responsibility and the privilege to model for them, including the messy parts. So start your faith story night or faith story time this week with one of your kids. So start this process today. Go to one of your kids and just say, hey, let's talk through questions you have, or where have you seen God working this week? What are ways you feel like you need God's grace this week? And begin with your own stories, and that will open up that conversation. And I get some of your kids are going to be a lot more quiet, a lot more closed off than others, but it doesn't mean that this can't begin to open up those doors. So anyway, comment the ages of your kids below. Tell me what questions you guys have found that have been really fruitful in relationships with your kids and helping build their faith. And I'm praying for every family here. Hey, if this was helpful, pay it forward, share this with someone you know who's struggling, and stick around for more. We're just getting started.